As a Salesforce admin who's used to working in Classic and then suddenly getting introduced to Lightning Experience, I will be the first to say that it is completely overwhelming. There are tons of new features available in Lightning Experience that we just did not have to deal with in Classic. So in this presentation, what I'm going to help you with is how to make your page layouts and the entire user experience, the entire user interface in Lightning super simple, super user-friendly, so that it will help you increase adoption, minimize complaints that you may or may not be getting from your end users, and make everyone's life way easier. So if you're ready, I would love to jump right in and get right to it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Giller. I'm CEO of Brainy8. I'm a Salesforce implementation partner, which means I work with organizations that are using Salesforce in order to help them get the most out of their Salesforce investment. If you're not already connected with me on social media, you can feel free to connect with me. No, I am not collecting connections or followers. I really couldn't care less. However, I am somewhat of a social media addict, and being the Salesforce geek that I am constantly posting all kinds of content on social media. So the first question is why? Why should we even care about the user experience in Salesforce? Well, let's think of a little bit of an analogy here. If you were to go into your closet, would you rather be working with a closet that looks something like this, where everything is cluttered? You walk into the closet and you're like, oh, where are my blue pants? And you have to start looking all over the place because you don't know where the hell you threw it last, because you were in a rush last time. You just slapped everything together and now you're struggling to find those blue pants or black shoes so that you could just move on with your day. Would you rather, alternatively, be working with a closet that looks something like this, where everything has its place? And hey, we all know that putting together a closet that's somewhat organized does take a little bit of time and does take a little bit of effort to not only set up that structure, but to also keep it in place. But at the same time, we realize, or at least most of us realize, that on a day-to-day perspective, it makes our lives way easier. In the end, personally, what I found is that when you're working with the messy closet, you are usually experiencing confusion and chaos. You are usually feeling a sense of frustration. You are often feeling anger, maybe even resentment. And in the end, you often have a lot of wasted time and inefficiencies that get thrown into your day. When you're working with an organized closet, on the other hand, you have clarity and simplicity. You have order. Usually, you're experiencing happiness and positivity. Why? Because typically, when we have structure and order, we are able to maximize our time and we can work efficiently. I'm willing to bet that if you think now about your own users and the confusion that might exist within your organization in terms of the page layouts, where users don't know exactly where to find certain things on the pages, chances are that you right now and your users are experiencing the type of frustration and inefficiencies and chaos and confusion that's represented on the left side of the screen. And I want to help you get to the right side of the screen. So now that we understand the value of why we should care about the user experience, let's pivot a little bit and focus on how. How do we go about creating the best user experience in Lightning Experience for your team? In the end, it boils down to three simple things. It's about simplicity, consistency, and ease of use. Let's start with simplicity. We're going to focus first on the navigation tabs. This might seem completely obvious to most of you. However, I can't tell you how many times I have seen users sharing their screen with me, and what I see on their screen is a whole bunch of tabs on the navigation going across the top that have absolutely nothing to do with their jobs. So think about it for a minute. Think about your users, the types of users that you have within your organization, and the role that they play within the organization. What features, what functionality do they need access to, and which ones are completely irrelevant for their jobs today within your organization? So when you think about that, when you think, for example, about your marketing users who never will be looking at cases, will never be looking at opportunities, will never be looking at orders or quotes, go ahead and remove those tabs from their navigation. They should never be looking at it. It is complete clutter for them. So think about all of your users within your organization and then go into Salesforce. And by the way, if you're wondering how and where do you go about doing this, it's all in the app manager. And by the way, these features are nearly identical to the same features that existed in Salesforce Classic. So the app manager will allow you to set up different apps for your different user bases that you have within your organization. And that will allow you to specify certain tabs that should or should not appear as the default navigation when they log into Salesforce. Next, so we're still sticking with the topic of simplicity, but now we're going to focus not only on the home page, but also on record pages. And we're going to focus specifically on Lightning components that either appear or disappear based on pretty much any criteria you can come up with. What am I talking about? So here on this particular screenshot, what we're looking at is I've selected one particular Lightning component. That is the rich text component that you see smack in the middle of the screen. And as you probably know, when you select any Lightning component, on the right-hand side, you will be able to see the configuration section, the control panel, in order to adjust whatever customizable options there are for that particular Lightning component. And on the lower portion of the control panel, you're going to see a feature that says Set Component Visibility. And this is really powerful because this will allow you, the Salesforce admin, to determine when that particular component should be visible. This means that when you're on the home page, you can choose any attribute associated with either the user or any permission set of the user, meaning any field that you have on the user, first name, last name, email address, phone number, job title, department, anything else that you're using on that user object, or for any permission set. So you can specify on the home page that if the person's email address is john.smith@homedepot.com or their job title equals or contains vice president, then display this particular component, which means that for everyone else, it will not appear. This means that when you have a senior level executive, as the Salesforce admin, senior level executive approaches you and says, hey, I want my own homepage. I deserve my own homepage. And here's what I want on my homepage. Well, guess what? You don't have to create a separate homepage for them. All you have to do is go ahead and specify for all of the different components on the page layout whether or not they should appear or disappear based on that particular user being logged in. So that senior level executive will think that they are getting their own custom homepage, but in the end, they have the exact same homepage as everybody else, but you are able to control through this one feature, you are able to control which components appear or disappear based on the user that's logged in, or any attribute about any permission set that was assigned to them. You only have those two options for setting up the filters on the home page. However, the same exact feature exists on record pages as well, which means let's make believe for a minute we're not on the home page. Let's make believe for a minute that we're on the opportunity page or on the account page. When you go to this section for setting the component visibility, you will have far more options available to you because you will then be able to set up filters based on any value in any field on that particular object. which means that if, let's say, you're on an opportunity and that opportunity is in a particular stage or has a particular dollar amount and the user is a particular type of a user, then you could have certain things on the screen either appear or disappear as needed by the organization. That is super powerful. That also means that each user feels that they are getting a page layout that is customized specifically for them, for the type of roles and responsibilities that they have within the organization. So, again, in a nutshell, on both the home page as well as record pages, you can hide irrelevant components as needed based on your users. Next up, we're still on the topic of simplicity, but now we are focusing more specifically on record pages. So I'm going to draw your attention towards the top of the screen. A commonly ignored area is compact layouts. In this particular section, you as the Salesforce admin, don't bother asking your users what they want to see here because they will not know. And if you do engage them in conversation, they will start listing a gazillion fields that they want all on the top of the screen. They will want to replicate everything that's lower down on the page on the very top of the screen. But I'm telling you, as the Salesforce admin, think for a minute about your users and think about the type of record that we're looking at. So whether it's an account, a contact, an opportunity, a case, whatever it might be, think about those fields that you think will be most relevant for those users to see on the top of the screen. And simply customize your compact layouts so that those fields that you've identified are appearing on the top. And once it's there, then you can engage in conversation with your end users to get a little bit of a better sense, to fine tune it a little bit, to get a better sense of whether or not some of the fields should be swapped. Maybe they should be repositioned a little bit, but you are limited to only a couple of fields that you can put here. But this is really powerful. If you do absolutely nothing, chances are that you might have fields appearing by the top of the screen that are completely irrelevant and essentially wasting space for your users. If on the flip side, you take a couple of minutes to customize this area, your users might not even notice it, but they will completely love it. Next, we're still talking about simplicity, but now we're talking about minimizing the number of tabs that appear in the main portion of the screen. Let me drill in a little bit on what I'm talking about because I was very guilty of not doing this when Lightning Experience first came out. What did I do when Lightning Experience first came out? I realized that, wow, as a Salesforce admin, I can create whatever tabs I want. I can create as many tabs as I want. What did I do? I went to the contacts object, for example, and I created one tab for details. And then I created another one for activities. And I created another one for opportunities. And then I created another one for cases. And I created another one for campaigns. And then I took it a step further. I started playing around with emojis to dress it up a little bit, put a little bit of graphics in the tabs, and it totally works. You know what I did? I ended up pissing off a lot of my end users because what happened was they would look at the screen and they would feel like a circus just opened up on them. There were way too many options, way too many colors, way too many things to click around. So now my recommendation to you, and by the way, this is what I am doing myself for every client that I'm working in with Salesforce, I'm adopting the exact same page layouts that you're seeing right here. This is the template that I use for all of my clients for every single object, regardless of what industry they're in. I only put 2 tabs. There are very rare circumstances that I'm adding anything else, but generally speaking, only 2 tabs. The first one is details, and the second one is related. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. And this is very important. I'm going to drill into this a little bit more in terms of the sequence, but just one for details and the other one which is related. And by the way, putting the second tab for related, in a way, it's not even needed. Why is it not needed? Because we have the related quick links right above that. And I'm going to drill into that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. But let's scoot over to the right-hand side of the screen. And over here, the standard template that I do for, again, every single client, regardless of the industry, regardless of the size, I put 2 tabs on the right-hand side of the screen, one for activity and the other one for chatter. The first tab should always, I'm sorry, you cannot convince me of anything else, should always default to record details. Why on earth Salesforce hasn't done this as an organization to make the standard just default to record details, I don't know. I don't get it. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. But if you ask me, for any user, they go into the database and they do a search. They type in Fred Flintstone in the search and they see in the search results there's a record called Fred Flintstone. When they click into it, it's not because they want to see all of the related activities and opportunities and cases and campaigns for that. No! But usually they want to see details of that record that they clicked on. If it's Fred Flintstone, they want to see his job title, his phone number, his mailing address. They want to see those details before they will navigate over to look at the prior opportunities, the open cases, the open activities that are related to that particular record. So my recommendation, always default of the tabs. It should always open up to details, and related should come next. The second tab is related, and what am I doing in related? I am simply throwing all of the related lists. I'm essentially replicating the functionality that users are used to from Salesforce Classic, where on the top of the screen they can see all of the details for that record, and lower down they can see all of the related records. That's what I'm replicating right here, but I'm breaking it up into tabs. So the related tab, I'm just throwing in all of the related lists that are associated to this particular record or this particular object, just throwing it in there. And in the end, again, it's not even that necessary because we have the related quick links on the top where you can simply hover over any of the hyperlinks in order to see the details and navigate to it just as quickly. Next up, from a consistency perspective, it is super important for you to apply the same page layouts everywhere. This means that when you are looking at any type of record, you should always have the same look and feel to it. Users should know that if they're jumping from a contact to an account to an opportunity, they should feel the sense that, oh, I know exactly what's going to appear on the left-hand side of the screen. I know what's going to appear on the right-hand side of the screen. So you need to stay consistent across all of the objects that you have within your Salesforce instance. Now let's talk for a moment about path. For those of you who are not familiar with path, when this feature first came out, it was called Sales Path. And based on my recollection, it was initially only available on leads and opportunities, where you could see the status of the lead or the stage for the opportunity represented in this linear fashion with these chevrons going across. I have one particular client who refers to this as the UPS tracking. And by the way, every time he says to me, hey, can we update the UPS tracking area? I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? We don't have any UPS tracking app in your instance. But this is what he's talking about. And the truth is, it's a good comparison. Sales Path has been renamed to Path. And now you can have it not only on all native standard objects across Salesforce, you can also have it on practically all custom objects in Salesforce. Now, how and where should you apply this? First of all, you can only apply path for any field that is a pick list field. Now, with that being said, you have to choose carefully. Only choose a pick list field that represents milestones of progress for that particular record. So in this particular screenshot that you're looking at, this is an organization that is not using the leads object. Instead, they are using contacts, and they are tracking whether or not the contact is a prospect or an active client or customer using another type of a field on that particular record. So for the contact object, they want to have a status to indicate the progression on qualifying that particular prospect. So here we have path set up where we can see the different stages associated for this particular contact. It's qualifying this contact to determine whether or not we actually want to move forward in doing any business with this particular individual. You should not use path for just any pick list that's available. For example, on an account, do not use path for industry. Why? Because chances are that you have the industries listed alphabetically, and chances are that you have more than 5 industries listed, which means that all of the industries are going to be represented in a teeny tiny little piece of real estate on the screen. And if, let's say, you have a particular account that is in banking, then banking will be highlighted, and people are going to look and wonder, hey, how come all of these others, are they making progress? Are they moving over from banking over to all of these other industries like commercial finance, food and beverage, and manufacturing? No, they're never going to move over. And when they look onto the left-hand side of banking, they're going to see something like agriculture. That makes no sense whatsoever. So when you're using path, always choose a pick list field that represents progress, milestones of making progress on that particular record. Now, typically somewhere beneath the compact layout and above the tabs, that's where I will put the related list quick links, as you can see right here on this particular page layout. As I mentioned earlier, this is very powerful because this will allow your users to quickly see whether or not there are any related records, how many related records there are, and simply hover the mouse over that particular related item in order to see the related records that actually exist. That means fewer clicks. That also means it is a more consistent user interface compared to Classic. So this is what your users are used to in Classic, and now you're simply replicating it in Lightning Experience. It works, so don't mess with it and simply put it on every single page layout so your users can quickly and easily navigate over to the related records as needed when they're working on any record in Salesforce. Underneath the related list quick links, that's where you will see on the left-hand side of the screen the 2 tabs that I mentioned before. Again, details should always be the first one. It should always be the default that gets opened up. And next to it, you're going to have related. On the right-hand side of the screen, what you're going to see is a couple of things. First of all, if we're working with leads, contacts, or accounts, I will always put near the top of the right-hand panel, I will always put the duplicate notification. So if Salesforce thinks that there might be a duplicate, that's where the notification should appear. Immediately beneath that is where I put the 2 tabs, as I mentioned earlier, activity and then chatter. You should be applying the same consistent layout across all objects within your organization. So when someone goes to the contacts page, they are going to see a page layout that looks familiar to them. And then when they navigate over to an account, for example, they will have a page layout that looks nearly identical to the page layout that they saw on contacts. And when they navigate over to an opportunity, again, they will know what to expect, where the features that they are looking for should exist. You should apply the same consistent page layouts across your entire organization, across all users. So now let's shift gears for a little bit and talk about ease of use. And the first thing that we're going to focus on are global actions. And what do we mean by global actions? This is the functionality that we have in Lightning Experience in the upper right-hand portion of the screen. This is represented by default, it's represented as a gray plus sign. And when you click on that gray plus sign, you will see a bunch of options available. Which options you have depends on the customizations that you, the Salesforce admin, has made in your Salesforce instance. This is really powerful. Why is it so powerful? It's powerful because with these features, it does not matter what record anyone is on in Salesforce. They could be looking at a report. They could be looking at a dashboard. They could be looking at any particular opportunity. And let's say they get a phone call. And they get a phone call from Fred Flintstone. And they feel they know everything about that particular record of Fred Flintstone. They work with Fred Flintstone all the time. However, they need to capture the fact that they just received a phone call from Fred Flintstone, and during the course of conversation, they promised Fred that they're going to follow up with him in a couple of days on whatever it is that they talked about. So not only do we want to log a call, we also want to create a new task, and we might even want to assign that task to another user. By using this functionality, users do not have to go off of the page that they were on prior to that phone call coming in order to create both of these records. By selecting any of these global actions, what will happen is a pop-up will appear from the lower portion of the screen like a piece of toast coming out of a toaster oven, and you will have the corresponding window for whatever feature you just selected. So if you need to log a call, a window will pop up from the bottom lower right-hand portion of the screen in order to give you that new log a call screen. You can then go ahead without navigating off of the page. You can then go ahead, enter the details of whatever it is that you need to enter in, go ahead and save the record. It disappears. The call was logged. You can now go ahead and create a new task. Again, go ahead and put in whatever details you need, assign it to someone else if that's what you need to do as well. Go ahead and hit save, and boom, you've just created a second record without leaving the screen you were on when you first started. So think clearly about what features you want to put in the global actions for your users, and they will thank you later. Now, one piece of advice I have for you, what you might be thinking is, this is super powerful. Let's go ahead and throw in all kinds of options here. Don't do that. Put in the fewest options that you think will really hit home with your end users. Don't make this overwhelming for them. If they go ahead and they click on that gray plus sign and they see a gazillion options pop up, they're going to be scared. They're going to backpedal. They're going to say, whoa, I'm not doing that again. You don't want to do that. You want the exact opposite. Go ahead and put just a few options in there and teach them how to use it. As they're using it, I'm willing to bet that your users are going to turn to you and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could also have the blah, blah, blah feature, create a new opportunity or a new account or a new contact. Fine, go ahead, and as those things come up, you can go ahead and have those conversations, and you can always introduce it later. Next, we're talking about the utility bar. I will be the first to say that when the utility bar first came out, I sort of rolled my eyes. I didn't think a whole lot of it. And initially, I did not set it up for most of my clients because I didn't think there was that much value in using the utility bar. The utility bar is super powerful. There are a handful of features that you can embed within the utility bar, but for purposes of this conversation, let's focus only on list views. Let's make believe that the only thing you can include in the utility bar are list views. So go ahead and think about the list views that are probably most commonly used by all of your users. And they would probably be things like my leads, my accounts, my contacts, my open opportunities, my open cases, things like that. Go ahead and put them in the utility bar. And what this does is kind of magical. So it will appear on the bottom of every single page, regardless of what record you're on, those features, those list views. Again, we're not going to go beyond list views as far as this conversation is concerned. So you're going to have those list views appearing on the bottom of every single page represented as a footer. So let's say a user is looking at a particular report or dashboard, and then they realize, oh yeah, I should really be looking at my opportunities. All they have to do is select on the bottom the My Opportunities option. And what will happen initially is it will simply pop up, similar to the global actions that we talked about earlier. It will pop up on the bottom with a list view showing all of those records that meet the criteria for that particular list view that they've selected. Well, what you could do next is going to blow your mind. So in the pop-up, what you can do is click on the little icon in the upper right-hand portion of the screen, and it will take that particular pop-up and pop it out of the screen. And you can then put it on the side like another separate browser window. You can put it on the left-hand side of the screen, on the right-hand side of the screen, wherever you want. And then what you can do is leverage that pop-out as a remote control for your main screen. Now watch this. As you click around on any of the records that appear in that particular list view, the main portion of the screen gets changed in order to bring you to that particular record. This is really powerful stuff. This will allow anyone on your team to be super productive by just focusing on those records that they really need to focus on. That is the utility bar in a nutshell. Next, we're going to focus on list views. Why are list views so important? On the home page in particular, for you as the Salesforce admin to put list views, again, let's think of the most common list views that are used throughout the organization. Chances are that they are my opportunities or my open opportunities, my open cases, my contacts, my accounts, my leads. Just take those as an example and put those list views on the home page. And what this does is it makes every single user feel that their homepage in Salesforce is completely customized for them. Now you can compound this with the feature that I talked about earlier by making some of these components dynamically visible. So if you place, for example, a list view of my open opportunities and you place it on the homepage on the very top of the screen, and you have some users that are not working with opportunities, go ahead and use the feature that I talked about before to make that component dynamically visible to determine under which circumstances, for which users, should that component appear on the homepage. That is going to make you a Salesforce rockstar. Rich text. So the first time that I worked on moving a client over from Salesforce Classic to Lightning Experience, as many of you might be aware, in Salesforce Classic on the left-hand side of the homepage, you have the feature in order to set up custom bookmarks on the homepage. And very often organizations use this in order to put in URLs for commonly used either internal or external resources, web-based resources that their users need to access. And the first time that I needed to migrate over an organization from Classic to Lightning Experience, I looked everywhere. Where on earth do I put the bookmarks? I couldn't find any feature for bookmarks or favorites. And then I realized, after pulling my hair out and making myself crazy, I realized that it was right in front of me. There's this feature called Rich Text Components. As the name implies, it is super simple. You just take the rich text component, you throw it on the screen, and it will allow you to not only put text, but you can also put all kinds of URLs. So if you have external web pages that your users need to access with some level of frequency, by all means, go ahead and throw them into a rich text component. You can make it pretty. You can make it a bulleted list, a numerical list. And when you see over here, there are some images here. The way I did that is, again, I used emojis. And if you're wondering, how do you put emojis in there? All you have to do is do a Google search for emoji virtual keyboard. And you will see that there are hundreds available online. You simply go and you select whichever emoji you want. You copy and paste it just like any character into the rich text component, and boom, you're done. Anyway, Rich text component. This is very simple yet super powerful. Now, again, think about the dynamic visibility feature that I talked about earlier. You can put these bookmarks on the home page and make this entire rich text component either appear or disappear based on your users. Now you can also apply the exact same thing on record pages so that, for example, if you have opportunities where the close date was over 30, 60, 90 days ago and the opportunity amount is over a certain dollar amount, you can put a rich text component that will appear on the screen to the user, maybe to the record owner, saying, "Hey dude, how come you haven't followed up on this?" So that's another way that you can use the rich text components and also make them dynamically visible or invisible and give a very customized experience to each of your users in your Salesforce instance. And the last thing that I'm going to cover here is report charts. On the homepage, just like I recommended that you put list views of my opportunities or my open opportunities, my cases, my contacts, my accounts, my leads, and you put them on the homepage with the same train of thought. My recommendation is go ahead and identify what metrics are most important to different users that you have within the organization. Leverage any existing report that you have, or go ahead and create the report if it doesn't exist, and simply reference that report on the homepage by bringing it in as a report chart. And what that does is it gives a graphical summary for your users about the metrics that they should be focused on most. And if you're not already familiar with the report chart component, what you will notice is on the lower left-hand side of every single component, it has a hyperlink to allow the user to navigate into the report itself, into the underlying report. So they can very quickly drill into all of the details for every single record that makes up the graphical summary that they see on the homepage. That's it for me. I hope you found this helpful. If you've got any questions on anything that I covered in this video, go ahead and drop me a note, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.